Have you ever worked in an organization where the owner of the business was practically running everything? So everybody reports to them, they do the hiring, the operations, the strategy, and even payroll. And you start to wonder, what if this person suddenly does not show up to work? What if they fall ill? What if they even pass on? What happens to my job? Trust me, I've been there. There's this fascinating behavior that I keep seeing in workplaces, right? So managers who want to be the hero of everything, business owners want to be the fixers, they want to be the brain, they want to be the person who must sign off. And they really believe that they're doing the organization a favor. But the truth is that if a team completely collapses the moment you step out of the room, then you were not leading. What you were doing was hoarding. You were hoarding information. You were hoarding power. Today, we're talking about delegation, empowerment, and how businesses can grow, why some managers avoid it, and how leaders can build teams that can think, that can decide, and even fail forward without them. This is Behind the Build. Let's get into it. So we're going to be talking about why some managers don't delegate. Let's start with the uncomfortable bit, right? People don't avoid delegation because they're busy. No, that does not happen. What they do is they avoid delegation because they are scared. Most of the time they are scared. They are scared of being replaced. They are scared of losing control. They're scared of being outperformed by the very people that they are meant to be developing. And instead of, confronting that fear, they create a cycle where everything flows back to them. They hoard information. They do I'll just do it by myself because it's way faster. They gatekeep opportunities that could help the team grow. And the worst part is that they think that this behavior makes them indispensable. I'll tell you a story. There was a time where I had to go to the hospital for something. It was at a specialist hospital. I would go with my husband, and every time we went there, it would always be a crowd of people waiting to see a particular doctor who happened to be the owner of that hospital. So you have an appointed time that you were supposed to come, but when you get there, you can see up to 25 people. And once you get there, you are being handed a ticket with your number on it. And then you just be hearing number 1, go forward, number 7, go forward, to go see the doctor. One specialist doctor. And that was back in 2020. I remember there was a time where we had the appointment with him, and he was talking about the health challenges that he had, and you could tell that he was frightened about COVID and the implications on his health. But this is somebody who wanted to handle everything. The only thing that he was not doing was the work of the nurses. But you would have an appointment with him, and as you're talking to him, or as he's talking to you, he's being interrupted by nurses, being interrupted by security guards, being interrupted by people who want him to sign, people who want him to give them money to buy even things like soap for the hospital. So he was handling everything. He was telling on his health badly. I asked him, I said, when was the last time you took a vacation? He said, vacation. Like, he can't remember. Because there was nobody else. There was no other person that was shadowing him. There was no other doctor that could attend to the patients. Nobody. He was basically handling everything. And it was a very sensitive health matter. And so COVID hit, and unfortunately, the next thing I heard was that he had passed on. And what happened after he passed on was that the business, the hospital, had to shut down. I can only imagine what some of the patients that he was attending to at the time when he passed on would be feeling at that point. Where do I go from here? And the hospital had to shut down because the head of the business, who was carrying everything on his shoulder, passed on. It's quite an unfortunate story. My heart goes out to the family, and I'm praying that his soul rests in peace. But there's always a learning point in things like that. How can we better manage our business such that it can run smoothly without us being there? How can we empower the very people that we employed to do their jobs? How can we give them more power to do things and do it even better than us? How can we grow our business to the point where it's beyond just a branch, but you have different branches across different states, different regions, countries? It starts with delegation, and delegation begins in the mind. If you're somebody who gatekeeps, it's because you feel that you need to have that information, you need to have that power, you need to be somebody who is indispensable. People should always come to you. So what happens when you gatekeep? You hoard information. You feel like you are indispensable. They can't do without you because you just want that power. So you become the bottleneck. You might be the owner of the business, but what tends to happen is you are actually the bottleneck that is in the way of your business success. If you have watched this episode up to this point, please take a moment to like and subscribe to Business Backstage. It's a small action, but it makes a huge difference because it helps this podcast reach more people who need these kind of conversations and to keep bringing thoughtful and practical business learnings to the spotlight. So thanks. And now let's get back to the show. So let's talk about the myth of being indispensable. Let me tell you something that changed the way that I lead, right? A team that can't function without you is not a sign of excellence. It's a sign of your poor leadership because great leaders would build systems, they'll build processes, not dependency. And what I've learned working with executives over the years is that the leaders who rise in their careers, they are the ones whose absence does not collapse a department. So their teams run well, the decisions are still made, and the issues get resolved without anybody panicking. You can go on leave, you can go on vacation, whatever, without anybody panicking because they have built capacity. So they've built thinking, they've built confidence in their team, they've built leaders, not followers. Delegation does not mean that you're losing power, really. It just means that you are multiplying power and you get the chance to be able to do other things, in fact, more strategic things for the business that can move the business forward. So there are two consequences that managers never expect when it comes to delegation. The first one is team stagnation. So people stop trying, right? They think, what's the point? She'll do it anyway, or he will do it anyway. So they disengage and they become stagnant. And then there's also the manager burnout because the manager becomes overwhelmed. Not because the work is too much, but because they refuse to let go. They want to handle everything. So it's a deadly combination because it slows your growth, it damages your morale, and ultimately it affects your business performance. The 3-level delegation framework: you own, you run, and you represent. Now, when I work with teams, I usually teach a very simple model. The level 1 is own. So let your team handle tasks end to end. You need to start with giving your team members ownership of tasks, not only instructions, because ownership will help to build their confidence. Ownership will teach them judgment. Ownership will create accountability. So tell them, your job is not just to complete this. I want you to own it. Most of the time, they're happy to own it. Level 2, run. So let them run with ideas. So once they're owning their tasks, let them propose ideas, not just execute instructions. So you need to encourage them to think. What is the best way that we can do this? Is there a better way to handle this process? What is the risk? Are there any alternatives? So when people are allowed to run, they become more creative, they become more proactive, they become better problem solvers. Level 3, represent. So let them stand in your place. I remember one of the best things that a manager ever did for me is to push me into rooms where there were people in a much higher level. Rooms that they were meant to be, but for some reason, they will push me into rooms where there were executives. That is a manager that I will never forget because I learned a lot from her about delegation and about empowerment. And she will take me into boardrooms, into meetings where senior managers and the executive teams were, and she will tell me not just to sit, but also contribute. So for instance, what are the customers saying about delivery? What is their sentiments? And she'll say, Bukola, please tell them. And yeah, I was handling customers, right? I was the supervisor at the time. So all the problems that customers were communicating to the organization, I had insights into them. And so she would say, please tell them. What did that do for me? It boosted my confidence. It made me feel heard. It made me feel more of a problem solver. And then, of course, the people, that's the executives, now saw me in a different light. They didn't just see me as one of the customer service team members, but this is somebody who has the potential to lead. This is somebody that I can get customer insights from. This is somebody who can help to move the business forward. So it's important to let your team stand in your place because it's the true test of leadership. Can your team take meetings for you? Can they make decisions without having fears? Can they embody the values that you have built over the months or years? Because a strong leader would make themselves replaceable. in the day-to-day operations so that they can focus on strategic work. Fail forward, why your team needs the freedom to make mistakes. So let's talk about failure, because it's one of the fastest ways that people learn. Yet many managers treat failure as if it's something to punish. The truth is that you can't build a high-performing team while micromanaging failure. If your team never makes mistakes, then it means that you are not trying anything. So you need to let people attempt. Let them attempt, let them stretch, let them get it wrong. And they will learn from it, because every mistake becomes a data point that improves the system for you. So team members who are usually allowed to fail, they fail responsibly. All right. And they become more resilient, they become more resourceful, and ultimately more confident. The business impact, why delegation is a growth strategy. So usually when leaders delegate effectively, what tends to happen? Productivity increases because decisions are not waiting on just one person. Your customer experience improves because your responses are now faster. Your level of innovation rises because there are more minds who are thinking. And then you have employee engagement, which increases, right? People feel trusted, they feel heard, they feel like they are a part of the solution. The retention improves. So people stay where they are growing. The organization becomes scalable and it's not just centered on one person. So delegation is not soft leadership. It is an operational strategy because it frees the leader to think, it frees the team to grow, and it also frees your business to scale. It's one of the most valuable investments that any business owner or line manager can make. So here is my challenge to you. I want you to look at your team today. If you're a founder, you're a business owner, I want you to ask yourself honestly, do they function because of me? Or do they function because I have built them well? Now, if the answer makes you uncomfortable, that's good. That's really good, because it means that it's time to start building differently. Because the real leadership really is measured by what happens in your absence. I'm Bukola, and this is Behind the Build. I will see you in the next episode.